Video number 2, and this might be a lot easier this way. I want to talk to you about different ways that the fountain pens work, especially these pens here. This is a Wonkai Mini. I was going to do a video on it earlier, but it didn't work out very well. So you have on this pen, okay, it's an eyedropper. Originally, when they started having fountain pens, they didn't have things like this, where you had a converter or an ink piston that went in it. What you would have was a rubber balloon in here, and it was called an ink sac, and you'd powder it, and you would use shellac to adhere it to this. And once you had it adhered, there was a spring inside of here, or like on the conklins it was a crescent that you would turn, and you would line it up, and it would press down, and then you would stick it in the ink and leave it go. Some of them had a lever on it. It was a way to fill the pen with ink. Then they came out with something like this. And this has great points to it and bad points. So you take this apart, and then you'd unscrew this. Or you can just, on this one, you can make it a full-size pen. But what you would do with this pen is you unscrew this, and so you would take your eyedropper, and you would take ink, and you would go, yep, 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 so you got it to where you want it to be. Put silicone grease on the threads, close it up. In this particular model, you can't tell how much ink that you have in it. So I'm going to show you a different model, same pen, that's clear. And this one, you can see the ink level in it. You can see where the ink sits right about there. And later on, they came up with a piston that would rise and fall. There's also something called a vacuum filler, where it's like the piston, but instead it gets to a point, and when you stick it in the ink, it pops, and it sucks the ink up from the vacuum. But this was the original model. Now, the piston solves some of the problems this has. It's a great writing pen. It holds a lot of ink. The problem with it is, you can watch the ink slosh around in there. You can enjoy it. But when you get half ink and half air, what you'll tend to find is that it tends to burp. And when it does that, it's because there's too much air in there. And the heat from your hand, or going to a different location, different atmospheric pressure, in a plane, going up a mountain, driving from one area to the next, you get ink in this cap here. Now, there's ways they can solve that. They have a way they can put a thing in there that locks it, But it's simple. It's a minimalist style of pen, which is nice about this, because it's not one I use very often. Women like these. It's like a lipstick style, but it's great just to throw in the bag with you when you're hiking or somewhere. You got ink with you. You can see how much. You got a lot of ink. Even with this one, you got a lot of ink. But they later came out with a piston, and the piston would go all the way down. It was like a rubber thing that went down there. You'd put it in the ink, and you'd pull it back up, and it draws the ink back up. And what you can do with those that makes them very valuable is, when you hold it like this, your air is going to be up there. Now, you're going to still have some ink in the feed right here to the nib. So you can play with it until you get the air to exit, and you can turn it until it's all you have in that is ink. You can see it through an ink window if you have an ink window in it, or if it's a demonstrator like this. And then you don't have to worry about it so much doing that burping. Whereas with this, pretty much half your ink is just making sure you have ink in it. This is a fairly cheap pen. I liked collecting these models right here. They have a great sort of acrylic to them, beautiful, and I like the workmanship on them. I have a red one and I have a blue one. They make a green one, they make a purple one, a white one, they make a pink one, they make a black and ebonite and a brown chestnut and ebonite. But regardless of that, you even have a pen like this right here. This is a piston filler. this Hong Dion. You can see the ink window right here, that little thing. It tells you, and it doesn't really do a good job, but it should be much bigger. But it tells you how much ink you have, and you would turn this to activate the piston. Kind of not as great of an idea as, like, let's say something like this. Let's take a look. This pen. This has a converter in it that is like the piston. So instead of having an internal piston, you have this type here where it'll take a cartridge, but it'll also convert that pen into a converter into a piston filler. So there's various different ways that pens came along the line. When they originally had the dip pen, that you would dip it into water, into ink, and draw it up. And they wanted to have a way of a capillary system that you could lose ink, but not a lot at once. And this kind of defeats it when it has the eyedropper and it starts burping like that. But if you have an eyedropper and you're wondering why when you get down to halfway it doesn't want to work right, that's why. You have to add more ink, and there's ways around that too. You could add little plastic beads inside here. You could add little BBs, different things that you could do to be a way to stir the ink up, to lessen the amount in here, so that it creates more of a volume other than just your ink. Kind of interesting ways that people came about. History of this wonderful writing instrument. All right.